Okay, we'll do now the Maimer. This is the 41st Maimer over there in the Chelik Beis in Amorim Mulukotim. It's a Maimer of Nagbe Basi Legane. Now it says this Maimer, it says was Motzoi Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Boi on Yud Shvat Tovshin Lamed. Yud Shvat Tovshin Lamed was 20 years after the Rebbe was Nesias. It was 20 years. The Rebbe started in Tovshin Yud Aleph, and Tovshin Lamed was 20 years. The Maimer that the Basi Ligani, that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out to learn on Yud Shvat, had 20 chapters in it. And the Rebbe would explain each chapter in the year. So in Tovshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbe explained chapter 1. When it came to Tovshin Lamed, it was 20 years, the Rebbe explained chapter 20. As the Rebbe will explain inside the Maimer, the significance of 20 years after the passing and the learning of the Maimer of the Basi Legani. And this was actually published 20 years after that, which is, as it says here in the note, they were learning it for the second time because they finished in Tovshin Lamed, that was the 20th. And then later on in Tovshin Nun, that was already 40 years. And they learned this Maimer a second time. So that's when they published the Maimer, as it says here in the note. Now, the Rebbe said the same Maimer, he said it twice. He said it once during Shabbos, and he said it again during Motzei Shabbos. So this is mainly the Maimer as it was said, Motzei Shabbos, with the additions from Shabbos itself. So this is all incorporated in those Maimorim. And by the way, in that year, Tovshin Lamed, there was also the seam of the Sefer Torah of Mashiach. So on Friday, they had a separate Maimer. We learned it earlier, I believe, in Lahavin Inyan Ksiva Sefer Torah, that had to do with the Sefer Torah. But then on Yud Shvat itself, the Rebbe gave two Maimorim, one on the day and one on Motzei Shabbos, and this is sort of incorporates both of these Maimorim together. Okay, so let's learn the Maimer inside. Motzei Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Boi Yud Shvat Tovshin Lamed. Basi Legani Achesi Kalam quotes the beginning of the pasuk in Shir Hashirim that I've come to the garden, which means the garden is the place, the Olam Hazeh, to this world. The Eibishter is saying to Knesset Yisrael, to the Yidden, that I've come back to my garden, Achesi Kalam, my sister, my bride. That's the referencing the Bnei Yisrael. That Eibishter says, I've come back to my garden. From the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Meivi kveit kedushas meirichamu admur bal hahilula behamaimer the yom hahistalkus v'yom hahilula shaloi. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, the ones whose yahrzeit hilula, brings down on the Maimer of the day of his passing and the day of his hilula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which is on Yud Shvat. So he brings down the Isa b'Medrash Rabbah b'Mekoymeh that we find in the Medrash Rabbah in Shir Hashirim b'Mekoymeh, and the place of the pasuk that it says Legani, meaning it translated is Liginuni. Liginuni means to my bridal suite, to a place of pleasures, enjoyment place, which means that this was the Mokim Shehoya Ikri Betchila, that the Eibishter came back to the place where he mainly was in the beginning. Hashem mainly was in this Olam Hazeh, in this Gani, and the Eibishter is saying, I'm coming back to my place where I was originally in the beginning. What does it mean that the Eibishter was here in the beginning and then he left here? Because there are certain Avedas that the people did, they sort of pushed away the main Shekhinah that was in this world. They pushed it away, so Hashem is coming back. It says the Iker Shekhinah B'tachtonim Hoyso. So the main Shekhinah was here in this lower world. Elo, but Shalidei Ho'inyonim Abilti Ritzuyim, but through matters that were not desirable. Maschil Mechet Eitz Hadas, starting with the sin of the Eitz Hadas. So through these matters, there were different people that committed the seven different people that commanded the generations that committed this Bilti Ritzuyim, these matters that are not desirable. Maschil Mechet Eitz Hadas, starting off with the sin of Eitz Hadas. That is when Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, which Hashem told him not to eat, and he ate. So these are the beginning of the seven bad things. The Shekhinah left from below to above. Left first the Oretz, and then Ad L'Riki Hashvi, until it went up to the seventh heaven. Omdu Tzadikim. And then after these Avedas, the seven bad Bilti Ritzuyim, then Omdu Tzadikim. Then Tzadikim stood up. Maschil Ma'avrom Avinu, starting with Avrom Avinu, father of Avram. And Echad Hoya Avram. Avram was one, stood up against the whole world to teach everybody about godliness. So he started V'yiridu es hashchina milmayla lamat. They brought down the Shekhinah from above to below. Ad sheba Moshe shehu hashvi, until Moshe came. He is the seventh. V'chol hashvin chavivin, and all the seven are dear, are special. V'yirido lamata ba'oretz, and he brought it down, the Shekhinah back below into the earth, into this world. The inyan zeh, and what does it mean? The Shekhinah was brought back into the world through Moshe Rabbeinu. But what the main thing, this idea, Hamshochas, v'yiridas Shekhinah lamata ba'oretz, to draw down and bring down the Shekhinah here below in the world, Nase be'iker al yidei hamishkan she'osa Moshe. That was mainly done through the Mishkan that Moshe did. Moshe Kosu, like the pasuk says, v'osu li migdosh v'shachanti b'seichel. So the pasuk says when you make a Mishkan, which was done by Moshe. Moshe is the seventh, is the tzaddik, is the chavivin, but he made the Mishkan. The pasuk says, "V'osu li migdosh shachanti b'seichel." Make for me the sanctuary, so I'll dwell amongst you. So that means that the Moshe is the one that breaks the migdosh, that brings the Shekhinah over here in Lamata. That's the way that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Shekhinah, was through the Mikdash. And the Maimer explains, why is it that the main Shekhinah, we say, was down here? Why was it down here? Because the ultimate intent of creation and bringing the worlds into being. Why did Hashem create and bring the worlds into being? Hashem had HaKadosh Baruch Hu had the desire so that He, blessed, has a dwelling place below. So the reason why He created everything and created the heaven, the earth, everything, all the worlds that Hashem created was for the goal that He can be in the Tachtonim, that He should have a dwelling place in the Tachtonim. And that's why the Ikar Shechina was here, because this is the ultimate goal, that Hashem created everything. So that's why He brought it into this world. The Rebbe explains that the all of the descent of the world is for the Aliyah. So the same thing is the sins that pushed away the Shechina, which is a descent for the world, is for the Aliyah that came about later on. Via Shloimar, so we can say. Just as the descent and the Ishtalshlus in general worlds, why did the Eibishter create the Ishtalshlus? Is L'Tzorech Aliyah, is for the purpose of elevation. Sheyiridas ha'oir ha'liki lahavis ulahachis ha'nivroim debiyah. The fact that the godly light descended to create and to vitalize the created being of Biyah, Bri Yitzira Asiyah. Va'ad lahanivroim the Olam Hazeh, all the ways in Asiyah, up till the creation in this low world. Ubishvil al Haliyah Shanasis al Yidezeh, is because of the elevation that is through the Olam Hazeh, and that's why the Eibishter brings and creates all the ways this low world, is because of the elevation that comes about through the creation of this Tachton. Al derech zeh hu b'neigeya la'yirida shebe'olam hazeh atzma. So the same thing is within Olam Hazeh itself. Why is the Olam Hazeh go down in a lower level within Olam Hazeh? Sha'yirida she'na'asis aboy al yidei chet eitz hadas v'inyan anyonim habilti ritzuyim shel achar zeh. That this descent that takes place in this world, Olam Hazeh, through the sin of Eitz Hadas and also the following undesirable matters, is also Tzorech Aliyah, is for the purpose of elevation. Generally, the whole descent of Olam Hazeh is for an elevation. Within Olam Hazeh, the descent that takes place because of the Avedas is for the purpose of Aliyah. So, bichdei sham shochas ike shchina lemata achshav, is in order so that when we draw down the main shchina below now, after it has left la'achrei shenistalka, tiyanailis yoiser maham shochas ike shchina betachtoinim shoiser betchilas habriya. It should be on a higher, greater level than the main Shechina that was drawn down in the beginning of creation. Through the descent of the Avedas that brought the Olam Hazeh into a lower state, then when we bring down, when Bosi Legani, when we bring down the Ikar Shechina Lemato, it is on a higher level. It's the Tzorech Aliyah. That's why it was the descent. Generally, the fact that the Oir Eliki, godliness comes down all the ways to Olam Hazeh, is for the purpose of an elevation. And within Olam Hazeh, through the Avedis that brings down Olam Hazeh even further, the purpose of that Yerida is for the Tzedek Aliyah, because the Hamshocha that we bring down now, the Ika Shechina, is in a higher level. How are we Mamshich, the Migdosh, the Shechina, the higher level that we bring down now? Mamshich B'Hamaimer. So the Maimer continues, that Hashem, this that Hashem desired, that He has, that He blessed has, a dwelling place over here in the lower world. That there should be a revelation of godliness below through the work of the person. Meaning, how does Hashem live? How does the dwelling place betachtonim that comes through the work of the person? The person's work brings the Shekhinah. That's what Hashem wants, which is al yidei iskafia v'ishapcha, is through subduing yourself and turning around, through subduing and ishapcha. When you struggle with the negativity and you turn it around the negativity, that's the way Hashem wants us to make that dwelling place for Him b'tachtonim. The shnei in yonim bazeh. There's two ideas when we say over here. So you have one, it's that the person accomplishes that. It doesn't happen by itself. And two, the person uses iskafia and ishapcha in order to accomplish that. So there's two in yonim here. First of all, shagilu elokus lamato, dire betachtonim, so that the revelation of godliness below the dire betachtonim yeh loy al yidei hamshacha milumaylo elo al yidei avodas adam, should be not by means of getting hamshacha from above, but it should be work of the person to do it. And v'shaha avodah shal yoda nasa gilu elokus ba'olam tia ha'avodah di iskafia v'ishapcha, and that what kind of avodah that will bring about that revelation of godliness and will in the world should be the work of iskafia v'ishapcha, subduing and turning around, which means, first of all, A, that it's the person's work, and B, what kind of a work of the person is iskafia v'ishapcha. So the Rebbe said we can say that the shemoishiv shashleimus the dira betachtonim, this that the Frierdiker Rebbe adds in the Maimer, that the wholesomeness of the dira betachtonim, whose kshasiyas hadira iadei avodah the iskafia v'ishapcha, is that when you make the dira through the specific avodah of iskafia v'ishapcha. So why is it dafke? Why isn't it enough just that the person has to make it? But we're saying the person makes it through iskafia and ishapcha. Why is that the importance? Kalpizem mudgesh od yoser maila hamshochas ikesh chine betachtonim achshov legabe hamshocha shahoyso betchilas habriyah. Because through this, when we say iskafia v'ishapcha, we emphasize more the advantage of the Shekhinah that we bring down, the main Shekhinah that we bring down now, after it left, relative to the Hamshacha that it was in the beginning. We understand better the advantage of the Shekhinah that we bring down now more than it was before, because we were saying that the Shekhinah now is brought down through a way of Iskafia v'Yishapcha. This, that, what we brought down now, what we bring down after there was the descent in the world through the Avedas. We're saying that this is greater than it was in the beginning of creation. It's loirak mipnei shekola liya shel achere yirida hi liya lemayla yoser mahadarga shelifnei hayirida. Generally, every time that there is an elevation that comes after a descent, that's the standard. There is an advantage, and you go higher than the step, than the level that was before the Yerida, because we say Yerida Tzorech Aliyah. So there is the general concept that if there is a Yerida, there is an Aliyah. But the Rebbe wants to explain that the fact that there is an elevation now in the Iker Shekhinah that we bring down is not just because it's an elevation, because it follows a descent, and every elevation, but specifically associated with the advantage of Iskafia, Elagam Lifisha Hamshocha Achshov, Yidei Avodah Iskafia Vishapcha. But also to emphasize that the what we draw down, the fact that we bring down now, is specifically through the Avodah of Iskafia Vishapcha. That makes it a higher level. That makes it a greater hamshocha, is because now the way we bring it down is through Iskafia and Ishapcha. Mash'enkein lifnei chet eitz hadas, as opposed to before the chet eitz hadas. Av shegam hamshochas iker shchina betachtonim oz hoysa al yidei avodas adam harishon. So also then, when Adam Harishon, Lachatchila in creation, how did he bring down the Iker Shechina B'Tachtenim? There was Avodah, there was also Adam Harishon, because as the Pasuk says, the Eibishter put him into Gan Eden, Le'avda U'Leshamra. So that means that Adam Harishon worked in the Gan Eden. But Havodah Oz Hoyel Hamshich Alakus. But the avodah then by Adam Harishon was to bring down godliness from above. But it wasn't the avodah of Iskafia and Ishapcha. The avodah of Iskafia. So the Maimer wants to emphasize that the advantage that we bring down the higher level of Shekhinah is because our Hamshocha comes through Iskafia and Ishapcha. Not just the fact that it comes through Avodah Sa'adam. Avodah Sa'adam was by Adam Harishon also. But Adam, main Avodah was to bring down godliness Milamayla, not to struggle, not to fight against Iskafia in a way of Iskafia. But our Avodah is the Avodah of Iskafia V'Yishapcha. And that's why we bring down a higher level, because we do it through Iskafia V'Yishapcha. So the Rebbe brings down over here that the advantage of the Shechina that we bring down now is because it comes through Iskafia V'Yishapcha. And the Rebbe explains now in Nois Gimel that in a similar way is the building of the Mishkan came after the descent, after the Chet of the Egel, after the Egel. Not the Eibishter could have told them to do a Mishkan even before the Chet Egel, but the whole idea over here is that it comes after the descent, after a Chet Egel. Then we built the Mishkan. V'yesh Loimar Gimel. Zehu Mashasi is a Mishkan Hoy La'acharei Chet Egel. This is why the Mishkan, the making of the Mishkan took place after the sin of the Egel. What was the intent of the descent of the world that took place when we did the Egel? Before we made the Mishkan. So there was a descent. What was the purpose? What was the intent of that descent of the that took place from the sin of the Egel before they built the Mishkan? That is because the avodah of making a mikdash should be not just to fulfill the command of the Eibishter says. So if they built a Mishkan, if it wasn't the Egel, they would be doing Hashem's command. But the Eibishter wanted that when they built a Mishkan, they should elogam ha'avodah the iskafia v'ishabcha. That there should also be this avodah of iskafia v'ishabcha. The Kumavur v'hamaimer, as the Maimer explains, that the building of the Mishkan is really the avodah of iskafia v'ishabcha. Kumavur v'hamaimer, as the Maimer explains, ha'avodah de v'osu limigdash, that when the service of make for me, the Eibishter says, make for me a sanctuary, that is to turn around the folly, the foolishness of the other side, l'shtus de kedusha, to shtus of kedusha. That means when you build the mikdash to turn around from shtus de l'umazeh to shtus de kedusha, v'lahapich hasheker the olam, to turn the falsehood, sheker, that's shin kuf reish, the same letters as keresh, to turn the sheker of the world, the keresh hamishkan, keresh. So take that falsehood and to turn iskafia ihapcha and turn it into the keresh hamishkan. You built the mishkan out of the corruption. And that way it became V'shachanti b'soicham, the Eibishter rests through iskafia v'ishapcha hamshochas ike shchina b'tachtoinim, to bring down the main shchina b'tachtoinim, which is l'mayla yosem b'kmoi shahoyo koydem ached. This is on a higher level than it was before this. So now that we're explaining that the whole idea is that after the descent, we bring down a higher level, and we bring it down through the avodah of iskafia v'ishapcha. This explains why the Mishkan was built after the Chet Tzadal al Das, after the Chet Egel, which was a descent, and then they build the Mishkan so they can turn it around later on, as the building of the Mishkan was to turn around from Sheker to Keresh and from Shtus to Lumazah to Shtus to Kedusha. The Inyan Zeh, and this idea, that when we draw down the main Shechina B'tachtoin in the Mishkan was on a higher level than the Shechina B'tachtoin was before the sin. Move on, Gam Izeh Shan Hoga the Oilam Gam Koidem Hachet Hoyso Alpi Teva. That the conduct of the world before the sin, before the Egel, so Hoyso Alpi Teva. So it wasn't a miraculous conduct, it was a natural conduct. So you see what transpired through the sin. They merited now a miraculous, because the Mishkan brought about miraculous conduct. So the descent that took place by the sin of the Egel led later on to a new conduct, to a conduct which is a conduct of Nisim. So the also before the sin, it was based on Piteva. The Shoyrish HaTeva, the root of Teva comes from the Oir, that is relative to the world. But once you created the Mishkan, over there was a miraculous conduct which is higher than nature. K'maimer Chazal, as the saying of our sages, Asora Nisim Nasu Laviseinu Bebeis Hamikdash. 10 miracles took place to our fathers in the Beis Hamikdash, so we see that in the Beis Hamikdash there was miracles. And also in the Mishkan, this is in the Beis Hamikdash, but in the Mishkan was also miraculous conduct. That means that once the Mishkan was created, we started a miraculous conduct. The Sheiresh HaNisim Huma Oir Shalom Eilam Oilam is the root of Nisim is from the light, which is higher than the world. So we see that through the descent, they were elevated later on through the Egel. And before that they had a teva. Now they're higher than the world. The Seder is it wasn't just a miraculous, but Shebekodesh Hakadoshim, it was like an outstanding miracle. Over there he says, Mekoim ha'oren einem in Hamida, the space of the oren, where the oren stood, did not take up, was not immeasurable. It's mokim, it had both. It was in space, and it was also higher than space at the same time. So, because the Torah required the oren to be a space, Amasayim B'chetz, you need to have space, but yet when you measured it from both sides, it didn't take up any space, so it was space and not space at once. So that's not just a miracle if you say it doesn't take up space, but here you're saying both. It takes up space and is higher than space. In order to be that connection of the two opposites, space and higher than space, this is specifically through the revelation of the Ein Sof. That is such a revelation of Ein Sof, which is even higher than the light which is higher in the world. This comes from the place of Nimna HaNimnois. It's not just higher than the world, which would be Lamaylam and Amokim, one miracle, but Mokim and not Mokim, the Chibur of these opposites of Mokim and Mokim. That comes from the level of Nimna HaNimnois, which means there is nothing that he cannot do. It's preventable from preventable. So he can have Mokim and not Mokim altogether. And that was the higher level that came about through the descent and through the control. And that also similar is also the descent of the world through the Golus, which is a descent for the purpose of an elevation. The fact that within Olam Hazeh we went down in Golus, it's for even a greater elevation. The Kivon she'ikir ha'avoida the iskafia v'ishapcha bizman ha'golus. The main avoida of having to force yourself and turn things around with the challenges is in time of Golus, and therefore ha'amshocha shal yidei ha'avoida shebizman ha'golus. That's why what we draw down, what we bring down through the avodah specifically in Olam Hazeh, but in time of Golus, Yinailis Yoser Mehamshocha Shal Yidei HaAvodah Shebizman Habayis. That is a greater level than the Hamshocha in the avodah of the time of the Beis Hamikdash, because now we have to struggle. Now it's Iskafia and Ishapcha. That brings down a greater level. Zehu Mehatayim, and this is the reasons that the revelation of the future will be greater than the revelation in the Beis Hamikdash, because our revelation of the La'asid Love, it comes through our struggles, comes through Iskafi V'Zapcha. Because when the revelation of the future to come is then we'll reveal what we bring down through the Avodah in Golus. And because Avodah in Golus is the descent, is Iskafia and Ishapcha, that brings down ultimately a higher level, and that will be revealed in the Osid Lavoi in that time, the Avodah that we do now. Okay, we'll leave it over here, and we'll be mamshik.
Okay. See you. Bye bye.